Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. In Swahili, they say little by little fills the measure, which means that small, consistent actions lead to growth over time. And that is exactly what Spark Shift Succeed is about. It is about your growth. So, welcome to another edition. I am Mal Sodete, and I have the honor of being your host. In today's business environment, organizations are under constant pressure to make faster decisions, adapt to change, and deliver meaningful results. But amid all the change, one thing remains true. Sustainable success is built on principles, not assumptions. Our next speaker understands this better than most. Jeff Paul is the founder of Curated Wealth and a leadership speaker who works with organizations to unlock human potential through purposeful leadership, stronger cultures, and meaningful employee engagement. Drawing on his expertise in human behavior, decision making, and personal development, he equips leaders with practical tools to build trust, strengthen relationships, and create high performing teams. Today, Jeff will challenge us to think beyond assumptions, confront the beliefs that shape decisions, and discover the timeless principles that drive lasting organizational success. Ladies and gentlemen, please join me in giving a very warm welcome to Jeff Paul on his topic, From Classroom to Boardroom. Jeff, over to you.
Thank you very much. And thank you for the opportunity presented by Paul and the team. I appreciate it very much. So here we go. I gave this, as you see the heading, The Courage to Change, to Lead and to Grow. I'd like to begin, first of all, with a question that I think at some point applies to all of us. A moment slowly shows up, perhaps quietly in our careers, and when things in our working life, when everything seems stable, you're probably also enjoying successes, and here it is, something inside you says to you that there may just be more. This is a question I have to ask you all again. Have you ever found yourself in that space? Yes, where nothing's necessarily wrong. You start to wonder whether perhaps you are still growing. And for me, that question did not arrive as some kind of aha, dramatic moment or turning point. It arrived slowly, and it was a slow realization. As mentioned, I did teach for a while, and I loved it. It was such meaningful work, and I was fortunate to be in an environment where I had great space to be supportive and where I could just really excel and love every moment in terms of what I was doing. I had incredible colleagues and mentors around me, and they are still people and friends that I value today. Everything made sense on paper, but over time, I felt a quiet discomfort in my head and in my heart. That predictability, the repetitive nature of my profession, it was a bit like pressing the rinse and repeat button at the beginning of every year. And here are the questions that I could not ignore any longer. Was this where I needed to stay for the rest of my working life?
Never
And if I did,
I might have anything they wanted, and I said, but we still want this.
oh, no.
Well,
If I think there's somebody's speaker on. So I'll go back. What would it be if I stayed where I was for the rest of my working life? And if I did, would I be left with this nagging thought that maybe I should have taken a different course of action and made a career change? With hindsight, I suppose I've come to understand something quite simple. Growth doesn't happen and doesn't begin when things are difficult. It begins when comfort starts to feel rather limiting. Let me say that again. Growth does not begin when things are difficult. It begins when comfort starts to feel limiting. So I made a decision to change direction entirely. At the time, being acting principal was great. I knew where I was going for my next post. I also had a 2-year-old daughter. I had my lovely wife who was running a coffee shop as well as being mum. And the future for me was no fixed salary anymore in my life, only a variable income tied directly to effort and outcome. There was no safety net, only responsibility, uncertainty, and the need to learn quickly or risk failing. And not failing just professionally, but also failing personally in my sense of worth too.
Yes,
I
Jim.
was standing at a tipping point, a moment where I could either grow into something new or stay where I was, safe, yes, but slowly compromising that deep and nagging thought that I had in my head. This was the decision point for me. Not just a career change, but a shift in how I saw myself and what I believed I might be able to achieve for my family and, of course, for myself too. I've noticed that many leaders do tend to focus and talk about their successes, and I understand that. But when I look back, I have to personally share with you that I've learned far more from what did not always go according to plan and did not really always go well. Not failures in a dramatic sense, but perhaps those missteps, perhaps those assumptions that I made that weren't quite right, perhaps the decision I made without all the information or insights, or perhaps I didn't listen carefully enough to colleagues around me. But over time, I've come to reframe those moments, not as setbacks, but instead, rather as learning moments. Learning moments and learning opportunities that could be better understood. Here it is. Those moments are definitely for all of us opportunities for us to learn something. Yes, change can be unsettling, it can be uncertain, and in certain environments it can be amplified by others and how they respond to you and your change. But let me ask you this. How many of us have delayed a decision waiting for that right moment when we think we feel ready to move? We find comfort somehow in just waiting to be ready. And here's another truth. Readiness is often something that we endlessly wait for, but it's rarely something that we feel with definite certainty. We never feel 100% ready for that change. And at some stage, I hope, and certainly it was relevant for me, I simply decided to make the call. And that's what happens to most of us. We all step forward with what we know, not with perfect clarity, but with enough courage and conviction to begin. And that's the real shift. Because once we accept we know we're going to make a change, something significant changes in how we face and cope with our mistakes. Instead of seeing mistakes perhaps as, steps backward, we can start to see them differently as part of a forward motion. Learning doesn't always come from getting it right. Often it comes from moving forward while still getting it wrong and adjusting and adapting as we go. So let's assume you've made the decision, you've taken the step, and you've chosen to change, whether that is a new career or a new direction, or perhaps a whole new chapter in life. What happens next? The reality is this. It is now when the new work begins, the real new work begins. In any career, there are moments when change is not just about what we do, but what and who we become in the process. Certainly, sometimes that shift looks like moving from employee to entrepreneur, stepping out of the safety of the structure into a responsibility of something that you're building for yourself and for your legacy. Sometimes it's being appointed into a leadership role for the first time, where success is no longer about your own output, but how you enable others to succeed with you. And sometimes it's just a little bit more subtle and just as significant, moving from a role where you primarily deliver or sell something into a role where you advise, where you guide and influence long-term outcomes. On the surface, these look like job changes. In reality, they're something far deeper. They require a shift in relationships, from doing things for people to working with people, from short-term exchanges to long-term trust. And here it is, from transactions to transformation. And this is the real pivoting point. This is where we have to pivot. Why? Because in transactional environments, value is often measured in immediate outputs, a sale, a deliverable outcome, a completed task. But in transformational environments, value is measured so differently. It's about trust built over time. It's about clarity. It's created in decisions that genuinely improve someone's life or business. But here is the significant factor. Shift does not happen automatically. It is a conscious choice to move beyond what is comfortable, familiar, or purely functional, and to go into something that's more intentional, more relational, and ultimately more meaningful, not just for you, but the people who form part of your team. It happens when we decide that how we show up matters just as much as what we deliver. Let's take how we show up a bit further. Over time, experience is not enough. It has to be distilled into something that you can live by. And for me, that process has taken shape in what I refer to as my own personal core pillars. It's not a framework that I developed in a boardroom or borrowed from some textbook or someone's theory. It's something that I feel I've built slowly. Yes, it started, I suppose, in the classroom. Yes, through leadership roles, through moments of successes, but just as importantly, through moments where I had to stop and recalibrate. This framework has become my personal reference point, not as a scorecard for performance, but rather as a way of asking myself more honest questions, holding myself accountable to myself and my principles. Am I showing up in a way that reflects what I believe leadership should be? Am I still learning at the pace that leadership demands? Am I creating a kind of impact on people that I would want to experience if I was on the receiving end of me being their leader? This is core. Leadership is never only about outcomes. And here is a controversial but sincere fact. It's also not always about targets. It is actually about whether our values consistently show up in how we think, how we decide, how we behave, how we take quiet moments to reflect, especially when things are uncertain, complex, or uncomfortable. Over time, I've found that most of what truly matters in leadership keeps returning to a few non-negotiable disciplines. The first one is certainly an important one, and I'm going to certainly share with you that these points align with that shift in relationship that's needed. Remember, transformation surpasses transactional leadership. Long-term trust enables what we want to get done. There's the real pivot. Transactional environments, transformational environments, and then transformation being deliberate. A choice to move beyond what is comfortable, familiar, or purely functional. So we're coming back now to what I believe are these core pillars of what leadership is about, the lived behaviors. The first one is courage. The next one is trust. Then there's focus, and then there's also grit. These are the pillars that for me determine whether my leadership style is simply performed or I actually genuinely live it. Because in the end, leadership is not defined by what we say about ourselves. It's revealed in how we show up repeatedly over time. So let me go through some of these core tenets of what perhaps are a leadership style. Demonstrating courage. Well, I've always loved that story that was once read to me, the Wizard of Oz. And what did the lion want most? He needed courage. Courage is not about having all the answers or waiting until everything is certain. Courage is about being willing to take the first step despite uncertainties. When leaders model, I think, this behavior, they give their teams permission to do the same. If your leader shows courage, you're encouraged to certainly demonstrate firm and important decisions by demonstrating the confidence to act, to learn, and to adapt. Leaders create an environment where others feel empowered to embrace the challenges, take thoughtful risks, and move forward together. And that's the important one. Then we get to trust. Trust is the foundation of effective leadership, and it's demonstrating trust consistently. It begins with trusting ourselves and having confidence in your own set of values, your decisions, and the change that you want to lead. But leadership is also, I think, importantly, trusting others. You need to believe in your team's ability to embrace change, step up to new challenges, and grow along the way. And let's not be naive. Trust does not happen overnight. It is built through consistency, honesty, follow through. It's certainly in every conversation. It has to be felt in every decision, in every action that either strengthens or weakens the trust that people place in you. And yes, we will make mistakes, but leaders who invest the time to build trust create teams that are more engaged, more resilient, and more willing to embrace the change together. A leader has to demonstrate, moving on, focus. It's about creating clarity. It's a leader who knows what matters most and keeps the team focused on the goals that will make the greatest difference. We have to go out there and find for that individual person, what is his or her tipping point? What are you going to use as a leverage point that you can sense is important to that person? And then maintaining focus doesn't mean that you have to have all the answers or all the innovative ideas yourself. Great leaders, I think, encourage different perspectives, listen with an open mind, and invite their teams to contribute. But certainly, once the direction, effective leaders keep everyone aligned and moving in a common purpose. This creates a shared ownership and a shared accountability. I'll also share with you that your team can be forgiving when they feel that perhaps you've erred, but they're confident enough to say to you, let's talk about whether we've got this bit right. Distractions and competing priorities are inevitable. It happens in every business. It happens so often in our lives. But our role as a leader is to cut through the noise, maintain a focus on what matters most, ensure that every effort moves that team collectively to our shared goals. Here is an important one, and I love this one. A leader has to demonstrate grit. I'm not known for being a handyman, and it's not often I get my little soft hands dirty. But I do know that in business, I've got to get down and dirty and work with grit. Leadership requires determination. Keep going when the path becomes difficult, sometimes remember that we have one mouth but two ears. Yes, we'll all face setbacks, we'll face obstacles, moments when enthusiasm begins to fade, days that seem long and tough, but it's during these times that a leader's resilience, I think, matters most. It's not about working long hours every day. It's not about simply pushing harder either. It's about having the resilience to overcome the challenges, the courage to persist, remember where we want to go, what we want to be, even when progress feels slow, and the determined to see the journey is seemingly waning. We've got to push on. We've got to demonstrate grit. There's a psychologist by the name of Angela Duckworth, and she describes in her book Grit that success is often the result of passion combined with sustained perseverance. I want to tell you, if there's a book that you should have in your library, get hold of that book, Grit. Google it, order it, and certainly it is a very worthwhile read. So, starting to get to the essence of what I wanted to share with you today, I would be doing both of you and myself a disservice if I did not leave you with something that sits, I think, humbly so, at the heart of leadership. Beyond strategy, targets, and execution, there is something that quietly determines whether teams truly thrive or slowly unravel. There is definitely a personal and a human side of leadership. Yes, absolutely. Leadership is about vision and delivery. It is about direction, accountability, and performance. But none of it holds without something so much more significant, personal, and fundamental: the people that are part of your team. But let me take this one step further too. It's not just about the people in the spotlight. No, in many instances, it is about the rest of the team that support you. I remember a CEO saying to me once at Liberty, he caught my arm and he said this to me: Jeff, never forget the people in the shadows. And it wasn't said dismissively, it was said with care. And the more I thought about it, the more I understood exactly what his message was to me. He was talking about the people who really get seen when success is celebrated. The ones who do not stand on the stages of all the awards functions, holding up their certificates and their trophies and their prizes. But if those people weren't there, nothing would actually work. It's the assistants who keep everything moving when things sometimes get chaotic. It's the operations team who hold the system together when the pressure builds. It's the facilities staff who somehow seem to create order out of complexity that we never get to know about. It's the coordinators, it's the designers, it's the marketers, it's the communications team, it's the travel planners, it's the event crews who quietly make everything possible. Yes, it's the very people who are too often only noticed when something goes wrong. And that just seems so unfair. It's the leader that needs to take accountability. But this is what has contributed to my change in thinking about leadership. Leadership isn't just about setting the direction. It is about seeing the people. It's about remembering people. It's about acknowledging people. Vision means nothing if it does not reach and resonate with the people that you lead. Communication fails if you just don't connect with people and connect with people in an authentic way. And gratitude is not an add-on. It's a discipline that demonstrates and tells people that they matter. When people feel seen and respected and valued for what they contribute, not just in their moments of successes, but in the everyday work that makes success possible, something shifts in that particular team. Teams don't just function. They commit. They carry weight together. They become something stronger than the sum of the roles. I'm sure many of you in your working life have sensed that that team over there just has something different, just has an essence, a spark. There's something about that team that is interesting. Well, for me, this is the human side of leadership. It's the leader being absolutely human with his followers. This is not new, and you've heard it many times before. But Maya Angelou's words continue to always resonate with me, and you know them so well, but particularly in the essence and especially in the context of what we're talking about today. People will forget what you said, people will forget what you did, and you all probably know this last line, but they will never forget how you made them feel. So in closing, I want to acknowledge a privilege that I'm living. I can now look back on my teaching career, I can look back on my wonderful time and journey that I had with Liberty with a deep sense of gratitude, not because of any title or role, but because of the people that I've worked with and time with over many years. Without the people in my line of work, financial planning simply does not exist. And this is the core of what I believe is in any advice-driven practice or profession. It should be people-focused. It should always be people-focused. People deserve advice, and in my instance, financial advice, that is more thoughtful, more personal, more deeply human than they might currently be receiving. Advice, in any instance, is not just delivered at people, but it should be built with them. Journeys shouldn't be transactional. They should be transformational for that client or the person that you're talking to, or the families that you're seeing. They should feel and measure the change that is happening in their lives and perhaps reflecting in their financial portfolios. And a platform that supports a level of care with real integrity is something that we as leaders have to provide, that we as advisors have to provide, where professionalism, empathy, just not overused slogans, but instead set a gold standard. So when I look back on that first teaching appointment back in 1981, which reflects a bit of my age, I must say, to perhaps a boardroom in Durban in later years, I don't see a straight line of a career path or certainty. I see learning. I've certainly grown, and I've seen people who encouraged me when it would have been easier for them just to stay quiet, to stay in what was familiar, predictable, and safe, to just keep pressing repeat on what I already knew. But somehow life kept on hinting and wanting just to push me a little bit further. And I think that there's an essence that we have to absorb here. There's an accountability we have to take. And one slogan that I use often is ABL, and I push this all the time with my team. ABL, always be learning. Why, you might ask? Because the moment we stop learning, I think we stop seeing. And when we stop seeing, we start missing the very people and the possibilities that matter the most. Through all of this, I now know that what Zig Ziglar once wrote, and I paraphrase this, to be true. You don't have to be extraordinary to begin, but you do have to begin if you want to become extraordinary. I hope what I've shared with you today resonates with you in some simple and relevant manner. I hope what I've shared with you today certainly adds some sparkle to your day and to your thinking and to your career, your life and your families. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Jeff, for those incredible insights. What I appreciate most about your message is that it reminds us that great leadership isn't about having all the answers, right? It's rather about having the courage to ask the right questions and act on the answers we find. That was an incredible session. Thank you again. I know we are out of time, but please do allow me, for those that can stay on the call, please do allow me to lean in a little bit. Jeff, you mentioned at the beginning of your presentation, rinse, repeat.
Yes.
Same week, same patterns, same excuses even. And I think the dangerous part is comfort starts to feel normal. You also said that growing doesn't begin when life gets difficult. Growing begins when comfort starts feeling limiting. And you called out something real there. Change unsettles people. It creates uncertainty. So, Jeff, the question from my side is, how do you know when to stay safe and when to obey that voice in your head that's been whispering, this isn't it anymore?
Yeah, that's a really good question, and it's very relevant. I think that there is just something innate in us all where those questions that are being asked, those thoughts that are coming into our head, yeah, they just seem to happen a little bit more frequently. You also might be at some kind of event. You might be at a meeting. You might be in some kind of forum. You might be at a conference where you start to feel, I think there's something more that I could do. I think there's somewhere else I could probably live what I firmly believe in and value. I think there's other people that perhaps I could work with in a more collaborative and purposeful way. It just is something that happens in your head. And once it started in my head, I just felt it more and more coming through in my heart. And I'm not a great person for change. Anybody who knows me will tell you, I don't do it too often. But the changes that I've made along the way, I've loved them all, and it's been fantastic. So I encourage people, don't be afraid of change. Don't stick with what you know. Step out, step up, and live it to the full.
Incredible. Thank you so much. And your closing slide speaks exactly to that. You don't have to be extraordinary to begin, right? You have to begin if you want to become extraordinary. So powerful closing statement there. Thank you, Jeff. I think maybe there's time for maybe one or two questions. I know some people are jumping onto meetings, but those that can stay, please do stay with us. And there is a comment from the chat, a question from the chat from Paul. Paul says, Jeff, what is the one thing you would like everyone to remember a week from now?
Remember people, humanity. It's the small things that you do. It's that extra phone call you make. It's that handwritten note that you might just send. It's that small gift you might place on somebody's table and just saying, thinking of you. It might be buying somebody a book and saying, I found this so valuable. Why don't you give it a read, and then let's get together when you finish and let's have a coffee together. It's remembering people who have contributed to your life in significant ways. Don't just live the now, celebrate tomorrow, but just think back on those people that made today and contribute to tomorrow. Just remember those people and acknowledge it.
Thank you so much, Jeff. Well said. I think you mentioned earlier on in the conversation is that remember those that aren't in the front line, the ones that aren't getting the awards in the ceremonies. I think humanity is a very, very important thing. It's more needed in this generation of leadership. I think we had a hand up from Joshua. Joshua, do you want to say? Okay, no hand up from Joshua. That's okay. Maybe just a last question from my side, Jeff, if you don't mind, and you can put it briefly. I do think that many organizations are navigating uncertainty, as you said, constant change and increasing pressure to deliver. What is the biggest misconception you see leaders holding on to that actually prevents growth?
Whoa, right. Well, in my current life, I think it's hanging on to models that have worked for a long time. And because it worked, in a certain manner, then perhaps a little bit of a makeover and a little bit of maybe new paint and a new cover and a new look, it kind of then can be reused again and again. But it's that rinse and repeat that I think just becomes stale. I think we've got to be bold, and we've also got to, with that ABL, always be learning, is look and see what's happening in other markets. Don't just stick to our generic, in my life, financial planning. I like to read what's happening in education. I like to read or listen to podcasts about what's going on in the rest of the world in say, Gen Z organizations. I love listening to young people and, just hear what they think are valued tenets of their way forward. Big thing for them these days, they can live and work wherever they like, and they certainly don't want to buy property. How different is that to previous generations? So I know you asked me to be brief, but I hope that gives you some sentiment of what you asked me.
It absolutely does, Jeff. Thank you so much. I think you said it. People conform because it's comforting, right? And you need to be able to take risk to be able to grow. Rob has given us a closing, really. Rob said, well done, Jeff. You certainly walk the talk. You are an inspiration.
Oh.
Thank you, Rob.
That's very kind of him. Thank you, Rob.
It is. Thank you so much. Jeff, on behalf of all of us, thank you for challenging us to pause, to reflect, and to think differently. And thank you for sharing your wisdom. And I think challenging our thinking and inspiring us to lead with greater clarity and intention, if I can say. It was an incredible session, and thank you so much for joining us, Jeff. Really, really appreciate your pearls of wisdom. Ladies and gentlemen, it is the end of the session. Thank you very much for joining us. We'll see you again next week, same time, same place, with another incredible speaker, Ursula Buertha. Until then, have a great week and see you soon. Bye, everyone.